So you want to combine two of the best RPGs of all time and play as Geralt of Rivia in Baldur's Gate 3. Well, let's go through and work out his class, background, and just how to create a Geralt-themed build. Now bear in mind that I'm going into this with RP primarily in mind. If you want to min-max as a Witcher, then go right ahead, but my build is going to be focused on accuracy to the character, and of course, fun. So of course the basis for any character based on an existing character is getting their look right. For species, despite all of his mutations, Geralt is still somewhat a human. Nothing too exciting to note for this species in particular in game. We can move a decent distance, carry lots of stuff, and a good of a few weapons. Now for the most important part, which is of course looks. Now I'm going for Witcher 3 Geralt, since he is by far the most popular iteration. Listen, I love you Henry, but when I hear the name Geralt, I think of this guy first. So let's get to work sculpting this Adonis of a man. The most iconic parts of Geralt are mainly contained to the face. He has white hair, yellow eyes, and a variety of scars across a fairly weathered face. For the hair, I went with the classic tied behind the head, since that's the box art, and tossed on a beard for good measure. Throw a couple of scars in there and some yellow eyes, and we're about as close as I think I can get with the default creation tools. If anyone knows of some good mods to make character creation a bit more in depth, with body scars and stuff, then please do let me know in the comments. For his background, Outlander was the obvious choice. His entire life after training has been on the road, mostly alone, surviving and learning about nature, monsters, and man. Plus, the added strength will go perfectly with our class later on, and who doesn't love some survival knowledge? As for Geralt's backstory, of course he isn't just the Witcher, he's also just a Witcher, and that means he's a monster slayer by trade. All of Witchers go through extensive training and rituals to become proficient in combat, peak physical specimens, and decently attuned to magic. They're not full spellcasting wizards by any means, but they can perform basic spells fairly regularly to aid them in their hunts. Their magical abilities are also the result of their training and rituals, rather than an innate ability from birth, which fits very well with a certain class in-game. Geralt's training specifically was at the School of the Wolf in Kaer Morhen, which conveniently has a very balanced fighting style. In The Witcher 3 he primarily fights with longswords, signs, and occasionally the hand crossbow, alongside various bombs and other throwables. Taking into account all of this, Geralt is a fighter first and a caster second, so it only really makes sense to do a spot of multiclassing. So first up, we're going at Fighter, and we're going to stick with it for 6 levels, and afterwards we'll go Warlock for the last 6 levels to expand our magical abilities and pick up a few feats and invocations along the way. I'll come to Warlock when we go over leveling up, so first let's go over why Fighter. Second Wind is the only extra thing we get with this class right out of the gate, and it makes sense for Geralt patching himself up mid-battle, alongside potions by chugging water and inhaling bread, since his life really does depend on it. For his fighting style, everything with the exception of protection and archery make perfect sense, but I chose to go with dueling. Since we're going to be sticking to longswords, which are a one-handed weapon, we're going to get that extra damage pretty much all of the time. For his ability points, we're of course having plenty in strength, both because he's super strong and because it's our main stat, so we kinda need a lot. Alongside this, we're going to have 13 dex, constitution, and charisma. Dex and con keep us alive and moving in battle, and charisma is going to be useful for chatting up the ladies, which Geralt cannot stop himself from doing, alongside helping us with our multiclassing later on. Intelligence and wisdom are 10, which is just fine. Now I'm not saying he's not smart, but compared to the other stats, they're not his main attributes. Plus he's always asking for help from others to find creative solutions, so this leaves some room for others in the party to contribute. For skill proficiencies, there is a lot you can go here since Jezza is a bit of a Mary Sue, but I went for investigation, insight, and intimidation. I didn't mean for it to be all I words, but hey, life's funny that way sometimes. Now I'm leaning into the detective/monster side of Geralt, using his senses to assess scenes and work out what happened or what he's up against. Investigation and insight will do great with that, and intimidation will help persuade people to tell us the truth or pay us more for our work if needed. Plus, people are intimidated by witches anyway, so it's the perfect RP fit too. Now of all that, we can get into how to gear him up and the playstyle to follow. Witchers do most of their fighting up close and personal, with one of 2 longswords, Steel for human and Silver for monsters. Yeah, it's a great song. Since we can't do that in game, a single longsword will have to suffice. You could also use a greatsword if you wanted, but I like to keep a hand free to cast signs, even though it makes literally no difference, but it looks better to me. Plus, leaving the hand empty means you can use torches without putting your weapon away, and mild spoilers for Act 2, that'll come in very handy. And of course, we went duelist for our fighting style, so the extra 2 damage for being one-handed will keep the damage coming in combat. You can use pretty much whatever you want for armor, since Geralt can use anything from the heaviest mail all the way to the lightest leather. If you want him to stick to his own school, then medium is the way to go, since that's the class that the wolf gear is in-game, but it really is up to you and your preferences, especially since he'll be on the front lines taking a lot of hits, so you might want him to be as tanky as possible. Of course, for range, the hand crossbow is a must, since it's the only ranged weapon he regularly uses in games. That being said, it's hardly going to be something he relies on, and is instead more there so he has the option if he absolutely cannot close the gap. Unless you find yourself underwater, you can have a much easier time using your sword to fend off foes. Of course, you can use the different kinds of bolts for utility and extra damage, so think of it more like that than an actual damage source from the weapon itself. And of course, sprinkle in throwables, potions, and weapon ores wherever possible for a little more accuracy, especially for big monster hunts or in the case of Baldur's Gate 3, giant boss battles, be they hordes of foes or a single entity. Preparing to fight by applying potions and poisons is part of the Witcher strategy, so learn everything you can about the creature you're going to fight and use that intel to use the consumables that will serve you the best. Outside of battling and gear, Geralt's playstyle in RP and conversations should really be on the neutral good side of things. In theory, witches are supposed to be true neutral, but Geralt has a strong moral compass that keeps him in trouble and trying to help people whenever he can. He also has no shortage of friends, so collecting all the party members you can is the way to go, even those that can be more trouble than they're worth. He's just misunderstood, I swear. If you can find a way to get out of a situation without a slaughter, then do it. If you can help a misunderstood monster rather than simply kill it, then do it. Question everything that is asked of you and decide for yourself the right thing to do, and always protect those you love. And speaking of love, personally, I'm all for bossy ladies with dark hair, but you can go for the fiery redhead or even red lady if you want. Both are equally correct. Honestly, Geralt has the potential to get it on with at least 5 women off the top of my head in The Witcher 3, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some. So don't be afraid to stick your finger in as many pies as your heart or other organs desire. Just be wary of your many lovers finding out about your sexcapades, as they may not take it too well. Now we've got everything else out of the way, we can talk about how to level up when playing as Geralt. As I said, we're going to be doing some multi-classing with 6 levels in Fighter and 6 levels in Warlock. Now you can do these levels in whatever order you want, but for ease of viewing and making sure I'm not double dipping spells, I'm going to go through all of the Fighter first. The first few levels are fairly straightforward since Fighter isn't really all that complicated a class. Action Surge is great and makes sense since Geralt has a much faster speed than a regular human, so he'll be able to make several attacks before they can even react. At level 3 we can pick a subclass and we're going with Eldritch Knight to dip our toe in some magic before even multiclassing. This may seem excessive, but it gives you plenty of options in battle and conversation to use magic to your advantage. Plus it gives us a few more spell slots which are fairly limited in game. For all the spells moving forward, I'm going to be sticking to the 5 signs available in The Witcher 3, those being Ard, Ignis, Yrden, Quen, and Axii, or in simpler terms, Force Push, Fire, Immobilizing Trap, Shield, and some mild mind control. So for our cantrips, I'm going with Blade Ward for Quen and Friends for Axii. For spells, Burning Hands is quite literally Ignis, and Thunderwave is Ard, so easy picks there. That leaves Yrden, which we'll have to pick up later, so it's going to be Charm for a little more Axii. We'll be double dipping a lot in this build, so try not to worry about getting everything all at once. At level 4 we can get another spell, and I'm going for Shield for a little more Quen. We can also pick up our first feat, and I'm going to list them all here since it doesn't massively matter what order you pick them up. Alert makes perfect sense since with Witcher Senses it's pretty hard to surprise Geralt. Durable gets us more constitution, so a little bit tankier, as well as giving us a full heal on a short rest, which again fits perfectly with The Witcher 3, where meditation fully replenishes health on every difficulty, but the highest. Martial Adept gets us a couple of attack maneuvers to use every now and then, and I'm going with Sweeping Attack and Riposte to mirror the Spinning Blade and Counter Attack from The Witcher 3. Now if you held a hand crossbow to my weakness and told me to pick an order, I'd probably go Durable, Alert, and Martial Adept, but honestly I think they're all about as useful as each other, so it's not really that big a deal. Level 5, we're going to get an extra attack, so nothing to complain about there, and level 6, we can get another feat. Time to start multiclassing to Warlock. For our starting cantrips, we're going with Eldritch Blast and Hunter's Mark. Yes, I know they're not super sign related, but we can make Blast into Ard shortly, and Hunter's Mark is something that Geralt semi-uses with a super duper focus on monsters during a hunt. Is this cope and a bit of a reach? Yes, but it's my build and it makes the most sense to me. For our subclass we're going with the Great Old One. The Mortal Reminder feature will frighten enemies whenever we land a crit, which is very fitting since seeing an enhanced human cut your buddy's head off would be pretty spooky. And as I said earlier on, people really do not like witches most of the time. For spells we're going to go with Hellish Rebuke and Protection from Good and Evil for some more Ignis and Quen action. Level 2 we're getting another spell and going Hex since one of the translations for witches is actually the Hexer, so why not? It fits about as well as the remaining choices, so we're going with it. For our invocations, this is where we're changing Eldritch Blast into Ard with Repelling Blast, giving it pushback when used at close range. If you're on a hardcore RP, then stick to using it at this close range and get knocking enemies off every ledge you can find. And we're also going Devil's Sight. Yep, this is a little bit boring and could be called useless, but it fits the RP. Those cat eyes give witches excellent vision so you can see in the dark, no problem. At level 3 we get to choose a pact and we're going for the Pact of the Blade, which makes the most sense by far. Makes our weapon better with magic, which is close enough for me with all the oils and stuff in Witcher 3. Just remember to use it before combat because I know I forget constantly. For our spell at this level, we're going with Hold Person to finally pick up some Yrden. I know it's not the same since it's not an area on the ground, but this is about as close as we can get. Level 4 we can get another cantrip, and honestly, none of them make sense, so I went Mana Illusion, which you could argue is Axii related. For the spell, we're going with Crown of Madness for even more Axii, and plus it's the only thing that makes sense at this tier. And lastly, we get another feat. At level 5 we get another spell, and I'm going Slow for a little more Yrden. And for the invocation, I'm going Armor of Shadows for a little more Quen. And finally, at level 6 we get one last spell, and I'm going Fear for Axii in an area, because who doesn't want that? After all of this, you should have a frontlines fighter who can pump some serious damage for your party, whilst also tossing out some great spells for even more damage, as well as some utility. And yes, I know I'm testing this out in a low level area, so of course I'm going to stomp everything, no problem, but I don't want to spoil those late game battles for you now, do I? Melee is going to be the primary range you'll want to play at here, since the hand crossbow isn't going to get you a ton of value outside of specialized bolts, so make sure you stock up on plenty of potions to stay healthy. Witches use potions all the time, so don't be afraid to chuck health and resistance potions are plenty to push your mutated body to the absolute limit. Also make use of weapon oils and poisons to take down serious threats. Learn what makes each enemy tick and figure out the best approach to take them down, both whilst in combat and preparing for it. 50% of the Witcher job is learning about the monsters of the world and how best to take them on and stay in one piece, so check out the stats of anything you fight to learn what makes them tick. And of course, despite the solitary lifestyle most Witchers follow, Geralt loves his friends, so back yourself up with a support character or two to stay safe and push yourself to the absolute limit. Whilst Geralt can handle most things himself, one thing he's never afraid to do is ask others for help, so call on your friendly neighbourhood wizards and/or goth girls for aid if you ever find yourself in a sticky situation. Also, and this is a very mild mechanic spoiler, I seriously doubt Geralt would consume the other parasites for more power. He's not one to lust for power, especially from such a sinister source, so stay off the gummy worms and maybe just stick him in a fish tank back at camp. And I believe that is pretty much everything for my Baldur's Gate 3 Geralt build. Let me know what you think of the build and if there's anything that you changed down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and if you want more Baldur's Gate 3 content, well, I don't have any yet, but let me know that you want some by joining the Discord and telling me there.